Right. Okay. Awesome. We have some good questions and comments in the working doc. And if anybody has anything you want to talk about, just go ahead and add it in. Feel free. Um, the first thing that we had was the 1.3 release, but before that, happy 2020, everyone. Welcome to the Roaring 20s.
Thank you.
We have 1.3 release where Mark broke some stuff.
Not really.
Do you want to talk about the small breaking changes that we're just calling out to be very, very
being safe more than anything else. Cool. So 1.3.0 came out a couple of days ago. I've marked the upgraded gRPC as a breaking change. Everything should continue to work the way it should before, but I've just highlighted it just in case something does break or let us know. So there's that. It should be all fine. gRPC is annoyingly backward compatible. I think the only thing that might potentially have changed, but I actually don't think it had, was some of the REST interface for watch might be slightly different, but I actually don't think it actually has changed. But I don't know if anyone was actually using that other than myself when I did the Unity SDK stuff for it. There is now a Node package hosted on GitHub, which has some other inherent issues, literally as of starting today. So we've reopened that issue now. We're going to look at moving that to NPM, basically on, which I don't know, because I don't know anything about NPM. And I asked people and they're like, it's fine. Apparently you have to authenticate against GitHub if you want to pull packages from GitHub, which makes the experience not very pleasant, especially if you want to build other packages on top of that package. So we've reopened the issue. We'll end up probably moving to NPM. The SDK is exactly the same as everything we've ever put out. So if you're just using the Node SDK, nothing's actually broken. Ideally, we'd still like you to upgrade, but eventually. But you may want to wait till we move it to GitHub or whatever you see is appropriate for you. Talking about new features just because we can, since we're talking about it. Terraform support for EKS is nice. You can find all the recordings of the community meetings down the Agones website. There's a bunch of validation, new improvements. You'll see there's some work being done for like new features going through like alpha and beta stage. So we'll have feature gates, things like that. Watch Game Server is now working on the Unity SDK, so that's all rounded out for the Unity SDK. Configurable log levels on the Agones controller, as well as a lot of logging stuff has been moved to debug, where it was previously info. So it's gonna be a lot less, more or less verbose. I think there's still some work there to be done, but that's a good step in the right direction. Some more examples, some improved stack driver metrics, and I think that's probably all the big things, unless anyone has anyone else that jumps out that I haven't mentioned. Preemptible VMs. That's a nice bug that got fixed. When we were using preemptible VMs in GKE specifically, there was a nasty bug in there where the node would disappear and then come back and the same pods would appear in there, and so the IP addresses were all messed up. Because the IP addresses were different. So now we pick that up and we get rid of those. So there's some nice good bug stuff in there as well. Cool. I think that's, the upgrade for gRPC, actually, if anyone is interested, is in place so that we can upgrade OpenCensus. So which will be nice, because I believe that brings some nice things in there that enables us to do things that I don't know anything about metrics, but that should be good. Cool. I think that's me done.
OpenCensus still OpenCensus, or
OpenCensus is still OpenCensus. It will eventually become there is OpenTelemetry, and eventually we'll move to OpenTelemetry. As far as I'm aware, OpenTelemetry has a compatible SDK, so you can actually do a drop-in of OpenTelemetry, but OpenTelemetry is still very much in alpha from the last time I looked at it. So at some point we'll need to do some investigation about when and where we want to switch over. But we shouldn't break anything when we switch over. It should still be all the same metrics and whatnot.
So just a quick question about the gRPC version upgrade.
Yep.
Did we change that, say in the SDKs, or is that just internal?
It should flow all the way through. I have a strong feeling we did it in the SDKs, but the old ones should still work. Like it's gRPC is and like I said, annoyingly backward compatible. I actually have to have a look. SDKs, Node. Feel like we did. package.json. Here we go. gRPC 1.2.2. Yeah. So it should be in the SDKs as well. Yeah, we advise upgrading, but it should still work. Hence the breaking change thing, just in case somebody runs into something.
Cool. Unless anybody has any other questions about that specific release, I know Robbie wanted to talk about stale PRs.
I put this on here a little while ago after I was looking at, we had a long list of PRs after the holiday break. And I was trying to go through and triage, and there were some rather old ones, in particular this one about the Java SDK that was really old and hadn't been touched for a long time that I want to discuss here. But since I put that on the agenda, Mark has since closed that one.
The Rust SDK one is probably in a similar boat, though.
Yeah, so that's sort of, but it begs the question of like, do we want to have a policy for sort of how long we leave PRs open, right? Like if you have something in draft, I think it's fine to leave it in draft as long as you comment every once in a while that you're still working on it. But things that are sort of open and become idle, especially if the author is no longer showing up or responding to comments, it feels like we should just go ahead and close those. Closing a PR doesn't actually like delete people's code or anything. It just closes the PR and gets it off of our dashboard. And you can always reopen the PR if you're the author to put it back on the dashboard and ping the PR again and say like, hey, I'm still working on this if it gets closed. So I guess part of this is a PSA that like, if you have a PR and you haven't touched it in a while and it gets closed and you're still working on it, don't take that as a personal affront. Just go ahead and reopen it and say like, hey, I'm still working on this.
Is there a PROW feature that will do that for us?
I don't think it's part of PROW. I think Eric Feda wrote something called FedaBot, which I think has since been renamed, but he had a GitHub account called FedaBot, which automatically closed PRs and issues after 90 days. It would ping them after 30 and then close them after 90.
I feel like, April, I totally heard your dog squeezing on something.
I thought that was you. That wasn't mine.
No, it wasn't mine. Somebody else's dog.
That's my daughter.
Oh, there we go.
Squeaky toys all sound the same for everyone.
Yeah, I think my inherent biases are in effect right there. Yeah, I just assume it's a dog doing something. There we go. Oh, hey-oh. I'm pretty sure there's a GitHub protobot too that will do very much the same thing.
I mean, I would say we can, worry about the implementation for it later, but I am a fan of the idea just because coming from like the gRPC world where we currently have like 700 open because nothing's been closed and we didn't have this process. I think it's good to get it started from the outset and keep that, kind of org hygiene. So
one thought I actually had yesterday, which I don't know if anyone likes the idea of, is like after every release, usually I'm trying to do like just a run through of PRs and issues to see if there's anything stale or should be closed or anything like that. I don't know whether that's a good idea or whether we should have something that's more like hardlined or I don't know.
I mean, I think it works, but it doesn't scale. So
that's true.
Can get the bot.
Thankfully, our issue list is not huge.
Right, but when we have world domination and every game is being developed with Agones, like that's just naturally 100%. Going to happen. So, yeah, I'm a fan. Does anybody object to doing that?
We've definitely got some issues that have been sitting there for a long time. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but yeah, we could do work to make sure that we want to keep them there as well.
All right, then I say we do it, and we'll figure out which bot is going to do it for us later. We can have the bots battle it out.
That works.
I mean, even if we don't have a bot, like Mark was saying, if we just say once per release, we'll go through and close stuff, like that would be fine to start. And if there's a bot we can just flip on and not have to write, then we'll do that. But
yeah,
it's a low enough volume that if we just do it ourselves, I think it's fine.
Yeah, no, I know there's a bot because we just did it for gRPC, but I just need to figure out which one it is. But yeah.
Oh, ProBot, cool. Whatever it's called.
Action item for April to turn on bot.
Damn
it. If this is just for PRs and not issues, or like will we manage issues a different way?
Probably do both.
I mean, the thing with issues is like some of them. I think issues personally has to be more of a like personal touch, because there are some issues where it's like, no, we're totally going to get to that, but 20 years from now.
Yeah.
And then I think it's on us to tag things as like we're never going to do this, or, you know, I think that's on us to use the tags and be transparent about what's possible, what's not.
Yeah, I
But
think
I don't know.
yeah, I was a lot more alarmed that a bot would suddenly start closing old issues.
Right.
Yeah, the bots. I mean, the bots that we've got, like Probot, another one for Kubernetes, will do the thing where, like, a number of days it'll mark it as stale, and so everyone gets a notification to be like, hey, you know, and if nobody comes back after n number of days after that, then they're like, okay, now I'm going to close it. So, and then you could do things like you can pin it and be like, okay, no, we know this is like never going to go stale, but like make sure it stays there. And like, there's just a labeling system. So yeah, as soon as we turn one of these on, there will be a lot of notifications across the board, and we'll need to go and do a whole bunch of triage. But there's nothing I've seen that will like be like, okay, you know, like we're just going to shut this down now. I just linked to the stale bot in Probot, which does pretty much that.
Well, and I wonder if our Panda friend can help with some of that too.
Don't know. That's a good question too.
If you're not in Slack, Panda just told us 10 minutes ago. There's Poll Panda will remind us different PRs that are waiting for approval, and it'll call you out if it's waiting on you, Mark and Robbie. So I think I'll have to check and see, but that could also be another option of like, you know, because we all want more Slack notifications, right? That it could call out potentially like, you know, issues that have been sitting there for a while or whatever. GitHub just bought, I think they bought recently Poll Panda, so I wouldn't be surprised if it started getting more implementation. Or maybe it was, I don't know, somebody bought them. I wouldn't be surprised if more features start, you know, coming in along those ways, but we can play with that. But yeah, to Stephen's point, like I'm a fan of the personal touch for issues, at least for now. Like when we get to Kubernetes level, that'll be one thing, but
fair enough.
For right now, yeah.
I don't have strong opinions.
You were going to talk about player tracking.
Oh, yeah, I was going to talk about player tracking. So this is the feature that I've been working towards. A lot of the work that I needed to get that's currently sitting in PRs is more around like feature flags and getting the stuff in place so that we can do alpha and beta stuff. But currently the design is up there. It seems like no one has loudly complained about the design that I threw in place. So if you get a chance to have a look, it seems to be reasonable. Probably the big thing in there, while the SDK does capture player IDs, so like I say, a connection, you get a player ID that comes through, so we can do tracing and stuff. Where the plan is not to store that inside Agones itself, but allow it to be passed off to other systems via webhooks, primarily because of concerns of stuffing that much data inside a CRD, especially data that updates pretty regularly. So we'll keep in the CRD basically counts. So like how many can we have and how many do we currently have? And we'll update that on a semi-regular basis. But we're not going to be like, while it would be really handy to be able to say things like, hey, what's my list of like player IDs in this game server and track it all inside Agones itself and even the SDK and expose that through, I think it's probably too risky for the CRD. So that's pretty much the consensus we seem to come to. But if people have other ideas or other thoughts, please do jump on. Otherwise, I'm going to start coding stuff soon.
I think, yeah, that'd be really useful for some things we track ourselves. So
yeah,
that'd be really appreciated.
Yeah, like it leads to a whole bunch of other interesting things too, like being able to auto scale based on player count, or potentially being able to do allocations based on like capacity. Like give me a game server that's got room for 4 people. I think there's some really cool stuff that can come out of that too. So cool. That's it. That's all I got. And Robert's approving my stuff on PRs. I'm
Don't give me a hard time.
You're not paying attention to the meeting? What the heck?
Yeah.
I can't believe
it. You've been sick, Robbie. It's okay. I'm not blaming you. It's okay.
It's a one line change.
Stephen, you have a lot of stuff you wanted to cover, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I just sneaked a bunch of stuff in at the end.
Oh wow, look at that!
Sorry, we love it.
Whoosh. Oh, then here comes Cami. Oh my god. Oh no, I'm looking at the wrong one. Okay, yeah, cool.
Yeah, so Cami's at the office today. But so yes, it was just something we realized internally that we always keep this pool of ready game servers, and there might actually be a case for having it set to 0. So, for instance, we have a matchmaking phase, and at that point, we could be spinning up a game server at that point. So we could reduce costs by having a ready pool size of 0.
You can have a fleet of 0. The only problem is you can't allocate from it.
Nah, yeah.
So you can. I think if you're going to do allocations, you can always do a fleet size of 1, because if you're going to have a node, then there's no harm in having a single game server on it. Are you saying more of like?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to do a fleet size of 0s with allocation that works, then you have to be happy for you to wait for a game server to spin up before you can allocate, and we don't handle that at all yet, or probably don't want to.
Yeah, I think that was the kind of thing, because we might have many fleets, and then of course having one of each will quickly fill up the node.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to do it yourself manually, you could have a fleet of 0, and as the matchmaker comes in, then like you scale it up a little bit at that point in time and sort of manage it yourself a bit. It could work too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Let me know how that goes. It's an interesting idea, though.
And then,
I said for the autoscaler is supposed to add things when they're needed. Is the autoscaler doesn't look for failed allocations as a signal, does it? Right? Because that would be a signal that like it's at size 0, we failed an allocation. The autoscaler says, "Hey, an allocation failed. Let me size it up to 1." But then I think something would also have to retry the allocation, right? There's like some weird logic there that would have to happen that I don't know who would be responsible for. But I can imagine like that being the trigger of like, this is basically what happens with node autoscaling is try to schedule a pod, it fails. We see that it could fit on a new node, we add a new node, and then you try to schedule it again and it works, right?
Yeah, you could almost do it as a manipulation of the autoscaler. Like you have a buffer of 0 at 0 with a minimum of 0, and then as soon as like the matchmaker comes through or something like that, or maybe like an allocation fails, then you push it to a buffer of 1 or 2, or you sort of tweaking your autoscaling rules. Maybe, don't know. It's probably a bit game specific.
I think we may have even tried 0, and I'm not sure it worked. I think there's an error, like the minimum value is just 1.
Ooh. If you can you try that again, and if you can't set it to 0, let us know, because I feel like that's a case we should at least support it in some way.
Yeah, we also have this situation where we say when we're out of QA, like on certain environments, we just want to scale it down to 0.
Yeah.
Through configuration rather than deleting the cluster.
You can definitely do fleet center 0, because I know I do it all the time.
Right.
It's a good question about autoscaling though. We should look at that.
Yes, because it's probably because we're using the autoscaling.
Yeah. I mean, you can fudge it a little by like pointing an autoscaler at a fleet that doesn't exist, but that just seems icky. So don't do that. That's a
I think that would be along the lines then, but the autoscaler can go to 0.
Yeah. So give that a shot. But yeah, if that doesn't work, then let us know and we'll see what we can do there. It's an interesting one. It may just be actually that the validation settings don't allow it, and that's why we don't let it. But there's nothing actually in the code that stops it from working.
Ah, cool. Yes.
If the autoscaler could go to 0, though, there's no way for it to go back up, right?
Oh, if you have like a percentage buffer, yeah, that's a problem.
Right. So if the autoscaler is like, oh, there's nothing here, let me scale all the way down, and it goes down to 1, then it has a signal of like when that 1 gets used, I go up to 2. If it goes all the way down to 0, it has no signal to like ever go back up from 0, and you're just going to be stuck there permanently, unless you manually add 1 to start with.
Yeah,
so I can see why that might be validation of like don't go below 1.
That's a good point.
Like 0 to 1 is typically like the hardest bit of autoscaling, and I think we haven't figured out how to do that properly.
That's exactly what we want.
Either that, or just turn off the autoscaler.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Turn off the autoscaler. Set your fleet to 0, and then when you want to turn it back on, turn on the autoscaler, so to speak, and then that'll actually automatically bump it up to 1 after a short period.
Yeah, because right now the autoscaler is only looking at current usage of fleet, and when fleet size is 0, that's not a metric that's useful, right? And there's no demand signal for it to change from 0. It has to look at something else. And maybe it should, right? I think this might be a reasonable feature request of like, hey, we want autoscaling from 0 to 1, right?
Yeah. I think we need to talk through the edge cases.
Yes, I think there are a lot of edge cases, but I think it's a reasonable feature request to say we want to go from 0 to 1 for what we expect to be very low utilization game server fleets, right?
Yeah.
Especially in an environment where we're encouraging people to create multiple different types of fleets.
Cool. And then thanks for looking at the issue with the where the pods and the game servers get out of sync. I think that's our major production issue now. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, of course, we have to go in and fix things. We actually, I think we're writing a workaround right now where Cami's working on that. We just scan the game servers and the pods every so often, and then just delete game servers if they're out of sync.
Yeah, I was trying to work out. I was talking to Cami about this on Slack about why your game server pods are being deleted in the first place outside of the Agones context. Couldn't find a good reason for that. I'd be quite curious about that, but I know you've got some workarounds in place. I mean, we should handle it if it does happen, especially if like the controller goes down and somebody tries to do some cleanup stuff or something, and then like it comes back. So, but yeah, that'll be in the new release. So we're trying to work out how to end-to-end test that, which I don't know. We're gonna do that yet, but we'll work something. The unit tests cover it, but end-to-end could be tricky.
And it's happening at out of office hours. It's kind of it's not something we're doing. Like someone's not going in and
it's a weird one.
Breaking it. Well, I don't think so. So that's a weird. I guess we've not identified the cause yet. So, and then I think it just came up. Obviously we support a certain version of Kubernetes, and we're going for the cloud provider, the lowest cloud provider version -1.
Well, highest -1, but yeah.
But yes. Oh, it's the highest of all the cloud providers. So I just wondered. I think there was a question in chat as well recently about what supporting newer versions, and obviously we do. It's at your own risk, but whether we could have some automated how do we even know which version we support? And then is it easy to add a later version and say, well, we don't support it, but at least the tests pass or something?
So how do you know which version Kubernetes Agones supports?
Yes,
it's on the installation page.
No, but how do we know? Like, there must be some tests that we go through to.
Oh, okay, I got you. Yeah, we have a whole end-to-end test suite that we run on a GKE cluster.
So could we run that same test on a cluster version +1?
You could run that test. Yes. Yeah. Yes, you could 100% run that test.
Yeah.
I think the other answer here is I'm not actually sure how easy it would be to run that test with Cloud Build, right? Like to parameterize Cloud Build to run on lots of different versions might be hard. Another impetus for me getting back to Prow. I've got other things I'm working on, but like if we had Prow, I think it'd be really easy to just say like do a second test. Even if it's at a low frequency. If we don't want to spend a lot of money on it, like if we said once a week, let's run a test on a different version, right? That would be a really easy thing to specify.
Yeah, right now it's a real pain.
Right now it'd be really hard.
And I guess, isn't it just important to run this at release time? Not like it doesn't really need to be run on master.
Well, it depends how much support we want to give, I guess, really. Like if it's the version that we support, then yeah, we want to run that on master because we want to know if it breaks at any point in time. How, like, if we're not supporting a version, how valuable is it to us as the developers to be like, hey, we know it works here? Because then we're like, well, we don't support it anyway, so like why are we putting in the effort?
I think it would also be more of like a smoke test, right? Like the other thing is if you run a test once and it passes, you don't necessarily have high confidence that it's really going to work for real, right? Because a test doesn't run for very long. And one of the things we get with like running the test over and over and over against a version of Kubernetes is you start to find like the things that fail only a smallish percentage of the time over the course of running it, every couple of hours over the course of the 6-week release period, right? And I think generally we try to switch that Kubernetes version relatively early in the release cycle and not like right before we cut a release, so that we get those sort of miles of like running it over and over on the new version before we say like, yeah, we think it's actually going to work, because we've run it a bunch of times, not just once.
I guess the other question is like, why do you want a newer version? Is there particular features you're looking at or things that are like really important to you that you need?
Yeah, it's usually
to
fix a platform issue.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not like we're like leading edge on that. It's just there are fixes that would help. So yeah, that's the only thing pushing us forward.
I've had difficulty finding documentation. Actually,
Yeah, we're still waiting on. I actually assumed we were going to be moving to 1.14 like right after this release, but Amazon EKS is still not on 1.15. There's a bug somewhere. I think I listed it.
Yeah, I read the comment thread. They basically said that they were redoing some internal infrastructure, and this release is going to be particularly slow, but they expected it to speed up again after that.
I don't know if you guys heard Robert comment, not Robbie, but Robert.
I was just thinking that a few times I was finding documentation for 1.12 and it's kind of fallen off of the radar. If you go to the Kubernetes website for documentation, you get the drop down for different versions. And I think 1.12 is actually no longer there. So that was at least an issue for me once.
Yeah, we hit some SSL cert stuff on the 1.12 when we were supporting 1.12 because it was disappearing, and their certs were unexpiring. So a bunch of our tests were failing on our documentation because we actually go check links. I mean, now we support 1.13, which is fine, but yeah, just waiting on one EKS to come through. Now we could potentially make an exception in this case, given that it's been such a while. If there's good reason, I don't know.
I think as well, if we can perform the same end-to-end tests, maybe just need to, make sure that, we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want, I mean, they're all just Go tests, really. So you can send a version, push it up. All the tests are in the test repository under end-to-end. They're Go tests. You can run them. As long as you've got your Kubernetes credentials locally, it should just work. That's how I run the end-to-end tests. I mean, I even run them in the IDE.
Okay.
Yeah, there's also make targets. If you just get checkout, and you could literally sync to the release commit if you really want to just test like the release commit, and then just run the make targets to create a GKE cluster for you, and then run the tests against it, right? And that'll really simulate exactly what's being done by Cloud Build.
Yeah, okay, give that a go. And then the last one was just, I think we mentioned it last meet about, we realized it was quite a lot of log spam. I don't know where we got with that.
So it should be a lot less now in this release. So we actually have options in the controller as well. We have both options at the controller and game server level for controller at install time, game server level at runtime, where you can control the levels. We've also been actively moving a bunch of stuff to debug. I think there's some more stuff we can move to debug. I think there's some of the SDK stuff, or the game server SDK server. It's probably some more stuff there. But sort of taking it as a piecemeal approach, so we don't move too much across. But there's a running ticket there. So if there's certain stuff if there's certain stuff that you're like, oh, this is still showing up a lot, even at the info level, like, chuck it in there. I think I have a note somewhere to go through the SDK server and take a lot of the runtime stuff and move that over to debug at some point.
And that's in 1.3.
Yeah.
I think we're just slightly behind, so we just missed that.
We literally released it on Tuesday.
Yeah.
You've got time. It's okay.
Yeah. Hopefully, next meeting we can give some more or comment on the ticket. I think in about 3 weeks we'll go.
Cami put some great stuff. Actually, that's the rule of thumb one. There was Cami put a bunch of really great stuff.
I put it in doc. So.
There you go. Yeah, Alex, you found that. Oh, there you go. Perfect. Yeah. A lot of this stuff has gone away, I think. Either it's been removed entirely or moved to debug, I think, for the controller anyway. I think there's more stuff in the SDK thing.
And would we have update of documentation somehow, or on Agones dev?
Sorry?
Do we need to have a page for this on agones.dev for the logs, levels, some other stuff?
Oh, like
or
what?
Just internally in GitHub?
We probably should add a section to troubleshooting on the agones.dev that explains different log levels. I don't know if we do right now.
Yeah, and I mean, do we need to actually make some actions on this issue before closing it? Do we need?
Oh, like the rules of thumb.
Yeah.
I made a comment on there on the sort of rules that I've been running with. I don't know if that's a good idea, but we could probably drop some of that in the contributing doc. Would probably be a good spot for it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's a pretty good idea.
By the way, we have some duplicate. For example, these duplicate tickets. If we link one with other, so we can close it, or
we do have a duplicate tag, so we can mark it as duplicate and close one.
Yeah, I think them equal. I would probably start working on them next time, because this is about some. We have regarding metrics like one regarding full new framework for metrics, like which would have like a bridge between open census and like API before open census in this one. So I don't know. Can we start from this one and then with this API for open census, or how it's gonna be?
That's a good question. My gut says we'd probably want to upgrade open census first, or maybe also do the research to look at what OpenTelemetry is doing before implementing that. Because I don't know if their APIs have changed or not.
OpenTelemetry, I visited sites. It's like under development, I think.
Yeah. Just knowing that OpenTelemetry is coming, I just don't want to make sure we don't. And eventually open census is going to go away and everything will become open telemetry. I just don't want us to make decisions based on open census that don't work for open telemetry for some reason. It's my only concern. It may be fine. I have no idea. Again, I don't know anything metrics. But yeah, that's all good. There was a previous PR for upgrading open census to like, I can't remember who's their name, that we ended up closing because it was really big. We could go back and find, maybe rejig that to bring back the upgrade of open census, because it was really big. It was both the gRPC and the open census upgrade in one go. We wanted to split that up, and it was a while ago. And I'm not sure where that person has gone, and I have a feeling they were a Googler.
Okay.
So we find that and we get that pushed through, because there's some cleanup stuff in there as well. If I can find it up here.
In the by the way, generally game server can produce arbitrary metrics. It means that it can select the name, or we need, because currently open census like pre-built all these things, so we should on the fly change it, and how we can limit in that way game servers not to waste our metric space like that. I mean, there was some ticket about this. Okay, I will open it. Yeah, I found it. So basically, that opened. Sorry.
That's right.
Yeah. And this is about arbitrary metrics. The last one in the list. Yeah, sorry. So.
Sorry, I posted stuff too.
Yeah. So I will fix the site. So I mean, what kind of expected from this one?
Oh, like how to pass arbitrary metrics from game server to open census?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yep. There you go. It's all right, I got you. Yeah, that's it. I think that's an interesting one, and I've definitely heard that one from a bunch of people. I think ideally, in some way, like like basically, they're like, yeah, we want to be able to pass any kind of metrics we want. From a game server into either Prometheus or Prometheus Grafana or Stackdriver, and I think that's pretty reasonable. To make that easy, considering we already have that connection. It just becomes it's honestly it's an interesting question about how we want to expose that. Personally, I'm not worried about users overloading our our metric space. That's kind of on them, like to shoot themselves in the foot if necessary, or have a backend that can handle as many metrics as possible. But we probably need to come up with some design first about how that looks. And do we follow like OpenTelemetry? Like we could take OpenTelemetry's API and basically just mimic it and then just pass everything through. I don't know what. Yeah. I mean, then we're doing open. It's going to be a bunch of work because we're basically going to expose it as like gRPC endpoints somehow. Like it requires some research. I don't know what the right way is. I don't know if anyone else has thoughts who actually do like more metric work than I do. Or could we ship the OpenTelemetry? Now that doesn't make sense. I was going to say we ship it with the SDK itself, but that doesn't make sense either. So I don't know. Okay. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the right answer is. I think it requires research. So if you want to go have a look and poke around and see what's a good idea. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Anything else big we want to cover? Any questions or anything? Who's going to GDC?
Everybody.
Oh, maybe not.
It's coming up soon all of a sudden, huh?
Oh
But
God,
we'll plan some sort of like get together in some way. So we'll have info on that.
Coming up. I was going through the GDC schedule. There's a lot of really good infra and op stuff going on that I'm pretty happy about. So on Monday's where's my schedule? So Monday's the Online Games Technology Summit, which I'm summit advisor on, so like bias, which I think looks really good. Monday afternoon is the cloud with overlap, which is annoying, but is the cloud summit. So like there's more cloud stuff if you're into Google Cloud. Throughout the conference though, there's also a bunch of interesting stuff. Where's my session schedule? So I'm actually really happy to see that. I've even seen like in the AI summit, they have ML talks about matchmaking, which I thought was interesting. So there's a lot of good content this year.
You could write like a blog post.
I could. Oh, and the multiplayer roundtables are coming back again. So Ed's running those. Here you go, my schedule. Put a bunch of stuff in here. Yep, reload. No, my schedule doesn't load. Anyway, but yeah, so it looks good this year.
We're going to make Mark do a blog post on
The
things you should check out if you're interested in infra, etc.
Multiplayer roundtables. Bungie's doing a talk about transforming Destiny 2 into live services. Yeah, it's gonna be good. So I'm pretty happy about the content for GDC this year. I may even get to a session or two.
All right. Do we have anything else you want to cover? Or does everybody want 15 minutes back? I know Robbie probably would like to go back to sleep.
Robbie has PRs that he needs to review. I don't know if he's allowed to go back to school.
I think I have to go feed children. Is what I have to do next.
They probably appreciate that too.
Yeah, sorry, one small question from multi-cluster support. So what kind of status do we need to make some changes to, or some additional? I can help with some stuff on that.
I think that's pretty much good. Puna's not
So
on
I don't
the
think
call
Puna's
today.
here, but she did ping the issue saying she thought
Yep.
it was ready to graduate from alpha to V1.
Yeah. So
So if you have thoughts about what we think that means in terms of graduation, in terms of like, do we have adequate EDE test coverage to make sure that it doesn't regress?
Yep.
If we want to write any docs about people migrating from the old APIs to new APIs, any of that sort of stuff would be great to jump on that issue.
Yep.
And you could also throw your hat in and say like, hey, I've got cycles. Is there something I can do to help? Because I'm sure if you ask, she would take you up on that and tell you where help could be used.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if anyone can work out why test game server reserve is flaky, let me know. Actually, Rob, if you can merge that one, that's another one-liner.
I just commented on that one. There was 3 lines and I had 3 comments. So there you go.
Of course you did. Of course you did. Where did you write? I had to appreciate the irony that I wrote this to put extra debugging in for flaky test, that when I put in the PR to put in the extra debugging, of course, did not flake.
By the way, is there some button to run the tests, like I see on some other repos? I mean, recheck.
I can push it. You need to have access.
Only that way. I thought about some bot, like GitHub bot, or okay.
No, because it's cloud build. I need to go in and actually do it.
Thank you.
Oops! Oh my god, I left in that thing. Okay, yep. Yeah, Robbie gave me legitimate responses because clearly I wasn't thinking.
How we do code review.
It's true. Cool.
All right, last call for anything. All right, no takers then. Then I guess we'll see everybody in February and probably chat and stuff before then.
Cool.
Thanks y'all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Cool, thanks.
Bye, everybody.
And dog says bye.